All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, clap once, please. If you're listening, clap 7 times. If you're listening, do this. Okay, we're ready. So what you have out is the Lorax. It should be on your iPad, or you should have one of these print copies. Either one is fine. And yesterday we started a brand new unit for Social Studies and Language Arts. And in fact, I had you name the folder inside Notability. 2 things. What were those 2 things that we talked about starting yesterday? Give me one of them. Globalization and argumentation. So today we are going to watch something. It's only about 20 minutes, and then we're going to do an activity on it. And we're going to watch something called the Lorax. How many of you have ever heard of the Lorax or seen the long movie or the short one? There's also a book. Okay, so we're going to watch the original version. And in that version, we're going to stop and talk about both globalization and argumentation, because this video has both things in it. The story of the Lorax talks about something that goes global and changes due to the production, and it talks about the both sides that you'll see in globalization, which we're going to uncover as we study this unit. In addition, it's making an argument or trying to convince you of being on a certain side or having a certain belief. And it's going to try to offer you some evidence. So the first blank on this document asks you about what it has to do with both globalization and argumentation. Let's leave that one blank to start with, because I want you to see the whole thing before you put those 2 together in your head. But you should be able to answer some of the other ones as we go through this. And we'll pause it as we go. So let me turn it on. So we know that now that we've seen in here, now that we've seen the onceler,
we're soaring galore.
They're making all of this money. It's an economic benefit. So when we think about that question where the opposing side is, there are 2 sides to this argument. Is this question argumentative? Yeah, we can argue this side or this side. The side of the Lorax, who's like, this is destroying the environment, or the side of the onceler, the man creating it. What's his argument? This is? Good because why? Because you make money. It's an economic advantage or benefit. So these are 2 sides. One speaks for the trees, and one says, I speak for the economy, making money. So here we have the effects of globalization. So we talked earlier about the pollution. What else is happening now as a result? What did they build?
Factory.
They built a factory. What else did they build? Houses. And as a result, everybody moved in, and now they live there. And what's happening? What is it? There's being trash, because people produce trash, right? And because these people were so excited about the monetary aspect, they haven't thought about the environmental aspect. So not only are they using the trees, and they've cut down the land because they live there now, because everybody moved in, and the factory is producing all of this smoke, the people living there are also producing trash. So we've got some changes that are happening.
They continue to speak for the trees. The loveliness.
Try it in soup. It adds great zest.
It'll cure those backache pains in your chest. Everybody turn.
So what are the benefits to this Thneed thing? It has a lot of uses. There's a lot of things that you can use it to. It does a lot of work. You can use it for soup. You can use it for clothes. You can use it for pantyhose. I don't even know all the things that they said. It's a very useful item. So on one side we have, it brings us money.
Yeah.
And what else? We can use it for everything. It makes our lives convenient. And the other side we have, what happens? What's the problem with the other side? The environment. Okay, so tell me again, what's going on here? This is another reason that the Lorax is saying these Thneeds are bad. What's happening? The animals, what about the animals? What's wrong with it? They don't have their food. And so now what do they have to do?
I have to go away.
They lose their habitat and they have to leave. So it's causing not only pollution, but it's causing animals to leave their habitat because of the lack of resources that the animals have in their habitat. Okay, so these swanny swans, what's happening to them? What's another example of proof on the Lorax's side? What happens? They're having trouble breathing. The pollution is affecting the breathing. So the Lorax is trying to give us all these evidence, give us all these facts. His evidence and his facts are related to the environment. What are the Wunzler's evidence and facts typically related to? Money. And then when we talk about this in this unit, we're going to call that economic or economy driven. Another environmental example that he's giving us, what other piece of evidence or fact is he giving us why the situation with the trees and the trucula, the thneeds is bad? Why? What's happening now? The fish are leaving. This is another environmental piece of evidence. So not only is the air polluted, not only is there trash on the land, but what else is polluted?
Is there water?
The water is polluted because the fish have to leave. So he just said the very last trucula tree was gone. What else is another piece of evidence this Lorax has given us? What else happened to the environment? What's it called? Well, what's it called? What's the word you use when something's completely gone? Extinct. So now we have an extinction of this. They don't know if they can make any more. They don't have any more. The trucula trees are gone, which means they're all used. This is what's gone. This is what's happening to the environment. There's an extinction now. And now that all of this product is gone, what's happening to the people? They're leaving. So the people migrated in for this product in this time, and then they're leaving to go out now. So when we talk about migration, people moving in for a product, they move in for jobs, they move in to get it, and then they also move out and trade it, or in this case, they leave too.
They jumped into their cars.
So now we have this Wunzler speaking to this kid about what?
About
Growing a tree. Growing a tree so that he can make more products? No. So who switched sides, the Wunzler or the Lorax? The Wunzler. So did the Lorax eventually, unfortunately it took a long time, but did he eventually convince? Yeah, it took more than his arguments. It took him seeing what happened, but the Wunzler has now changed. So this argumentation here eventually convinces him along with the terrible results. So we have the two sides and one person's been convinced of it.
Protected from Axis attack.
All right, let's talk about this worksheet. Let's go over some of the pieces that you filled out. I'll wait for you guys to get quiet. Are you stretching your hand up? Stretching. So let's talk about these questions on here and try to fill in some of these that you may or may not already have, just to double check. So what does this story have to do with globalization or argumentation so far? What did you find? Lisa?
Globalization has to do with this film because as the Wunzler expanded his business, it globalized the place.
Okay, so we have a globalized business. The Wunzler expanded. What else?
For argumentation, there were two sides to the problem,
Okay.
and the Wunzler side and the
Two sides to the problem. The Wunzler side and the Lorax's side. And not only were there two sides, but were they both trying to convince each other with facts and evidence?
Yes.
Yeah, so we had facts and evidence used to convince. And I want to add a little bit to this globalized business because you're going to hear some of these words as we do this unit. This globalized business has to do with a few things. It has to do with the environment, which is part of what we look at when we think about things globalizing. It also has to do with the economy. Has to do with environment and the economy. And I'm going to bring something else in called geography, meaning people migrating, people coming in. You guys saw that they built the houses, all the people came in their cars, and then what effects that has on the environment and on the economy. It provided jobs for all these people, but it also destroyed the environment. The next question says, what side of the argument is the author, Dr. Seuss, on? What do you think? Over here.
I think Dr. Sue is in the side of the Lorax
What makes you say that? Because you are right.
because at the end of the film, he makes the author regret his decisions.
The Onceler. Okay, so at the end, we know that Dr. Seuss is on this side because the Onceler regrets his decision. Diego, would you walk that way because I'm recording?
Sorry.
That's okay, just when you go back. Does the author, Dr. Seuss, does he make the side of the Onceler look really good? No. Does he make it look the opposite of that?
Yes.
Yeah, he makes it look not just a little bit bad. He makes it look really bad. So we know the author's on his side because if the author was on the other side, what would the story look like? How would the story change if Dr. Seuss was on the side of the Onceler?
It will make business great.
It would make it look great. Say it again, over here.
It would make like the world not look globalized.
Yeah, it would make it not look so globalized, or the globalized, or the effects of the globalization. Maybe it would be globalized, but how would the world look? Really good, yeah.
The Lorax would have been convinced with.
The Lorax would have been convinced on the other side. So we know which side the author's on, and we know what it would look like if the author was on the other side. The side of the Lorax is the one that we as an audience lean towards, and the one that the character changes to become. It would be completely opposite or backwards for if it was on the other side. So I'm going to erase. Can I erase? Anybody? I can't. Who can't?
No.
Not yet? Okay. So let's move this down and talk about the bottom. Okay, we got evidence or facts, but let's talk about these. I know we stopped during the movie. What are some of the things that you wrote down for the evidence that the Lorax states about why the Onceler and his production are bad, are negative? What are some of the things that you wrote?
Truffula trees are very hard to grow.
Truffula trees are hard to grow. We got some information about how long it takes to grow. What else did you find? You want?
The animals lose their habitat and
Animals lose their habitats. And what are some of the examples of those loss of habitats?
The animals have to immigrate.
Okay, the effects of that is that they have to leave or emigrate from there. What are some of the examples of the specific animals? What do we find? The swans. What happens to them?
They had trouble breathing.
They had trouble breathing, so we know the air is polluted. What else? The fish have to leave because the water's polluted. What else is a problem? What about the bears?
Like they didn't have food because food came from the trees and there's no more.
That's right. So the air's polluted, the water's polluted, the land is used up, and they can't live there. What about the opposing side, just for everybody to make sure we have the same things?
Money.
He makes money. What else?
It's a useful item.
It's a useful item. It benefits a lot of people in a lot of ways. Does it also provide jobs for people? Did you see them all moving in?
Yes.
Okay, so I know there's only two, but you can add that one if you don't already have that. They all come in for these jobs. It provides work for all of these people. So questions after the video. Who is the intended audience for this story? Who did the author mean? I heard it? Children. Why do you say children?
So they can make the choice that so they can be like
To convince them to be, and what is the side of the Lorax? To be more what?
Eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly or environmental instead of, what's the Onceler side?
Business.
Instead of economic, okay. To be environmental and not economic driven. So we know he's focusing on children. I mean, yes, it's enjoyable as an adult, but he's focusing on children. If I teach them this young, they'll grow up believing this.
Also, it can also be to business people as well, because maybe it will convince them, because this exaggerated situation may convince them of what they're actually doing.
Yeah, we have an exaggerated situation, and he's saying to other business people, look at the Onceler. He was this big businessman, and did the Onceler change his mind?
Yes.
Yeah. This story is decades old. Is this author's argument or message still relevant? And what impact do you think this story has had on this topic in society? What do you think?
It's actually coming true. Like, the exaggerated thing is actually coming true.
Are some of these things happening? Have there been water places polluted?
Yes.
Do we have pollution problems?
Yes.
Do we have a loss of environment or habitat for animals in places?
I feel like some people, like big factory owners, don't realize what they're doing until it's too late.
The thing that happens to the Onceler. All these facts and all the problems were there, but they didn't realize until it was too late. So he's saying, this can be a message to you, Mr. Business Owner, Mr. Person who owns all these factories. And what about the people? What about us? Is the problem just the Onceler?
No, it's us.
Well, why is it us?
Because we're not doing anything.
Would the Onceler have had a business? Good job. If people didn't buy them?
No.
Put this to the side. Okay, let's open the document called Globalization in History. Play your cartoon. Kachi Boom. Find someone to play with quickly. Kathy, you gotta play.
I did not want to win a cat. I didn't want to win a cat because I was up more because he lost, guys. He lost. This looks like a stupid photo gallery. Oh my god. Oh, broke my arm. Yeah, it does. I need a yeah, exactly.
Oh, the last two. All right, who was the winner? Oh, a round of applause for Ben Hub, please.
Are we gonna do this other thing that we did yesterday, like the decision thing?
The what?
Thing that we did
Yes.
yesterday?
What about it?
The room.
Like the decision thing, like decide.
Oh,
your-
agree, disagree?
Yeah.
We're not going to have that today. We'll have it later in this unit. Okay, so we're going to talk about globalization in history. Would you please flip your iPads for me right now? So it used to be that people lived and worked in one area, and there were very few people who went too far outside of that area. Maybe they went just in here, maybe they went just in here. But globalization happened when people began to travel more and more further outside their areas. And they would go to another area. And they would say, whoa, what's all this stuff over here? Interesting. And they would bring it back. Okay? Instead of just having most of the stuff in the neighboring areas, people began to travel farther, which means they'd be able to use horses or camels to travel longer distances. After horses, or camels, what do you think came next?
Carriages.
Come again?
Carriages.
Carriages, good. Carts or wheels on carriages. Okay, so people used that. And so not just one or two people on the horse, but the horse could carry more people. After that, what do you think?
Boats.
Before the airplane.
Trains.
Before the trains.
Boats.
Boats.
Boats. I forgot about
Okay. Then what?
Trains.
Planes?
Trains.
Trains. Then what?
Air trains.
Air trains.
Planes.
How did most of you arrive to school this morning?
Cars.
Air train.
Cars.
Right here in the helicopter.
Planes. So we had, I'll wait for you guys. iPad should be flipped right now. iPad should be flipped right now. So we had all of these things that enable people to be able to get further and trade. And in doing that, some people went all the way here, and while they were there, they have to eat, they have to sleep, they have to meet people. So while they're here, they ate local foods, they talked to local people, they met local people. Maybe they even fell in love with a local person. And sometimes they would go back and forth and bring those things here, and sometimes they would stay. So in doing this back and forth, the people who went back brought it into here, and the people who went here and stayed here eventually brought that into here. So we might have had different languages. We might have had products that grew here but did not grow here. Remember yesterday we talked about if you've ever traveled to a new place and you found a fruit or a vegetable you've never heard of. Like I came to here and I was, what's a chirimoya? I'd never heard of that before. Does anybody know, think about the words that you use even in Spanish. What we call a beet.
Right.
No. It's a beetroot.
The beetroot. What do you call it in Spanish here? I've lost the word.
My brain.
Okay.
Beterraga. Beterraga, right? You guys heard of beterraga?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a beet. It's like a beetroot. It's really, really red. In other parts of the beterraga.
It says
Oh,
here,
beterraga.
remolacha.
Ah, that's the other word. So if you don't live in, so in Chile, when you buy it at the store, it says beterraga. I guess you guys don't eat that, huh? That's why you don't know it. But if you travel to other parts of the world, the word is called remolacha. And it's the same thing. Same thing. So if we do that in our own language, in one language, imagine what happens when you go back and forth in different languages. So these people came to here, they might not have spoken this language, and they might have said, I don't know these words. Well, these people got used to trading it. So instead of saying, azúcar, they would come in and be like, sugar, sugar, sugar. And they're like, whenever they say that word, it means that stuff that we call azúcar. So we know it. Okay? And they bring it back. And while they're there, maybe it's their religious holiday and they're celebrating. Oh, I've never seen that. Nobody over here celebrates that. Maybe these guys are Christians and these guys are Muslims. Well, I'm here, I'm celebrating Christmas. What's Christmas? Okay? Oh, we're bringing this thing back. What's Ramadan? What do you mean? Oh, so when we have this migration of people, that's how we get this globalization. And it brings in these new languages, these new foods, these new ways of celebrating, all these new practices. And that's what you're going to learn about today. So, let's look at this document. You guys are going to have to roll up on yours. Okay. So there are 4 pieces that you're going to learn about, and we're going to do it in what's called jigsaw. So I'm going to number you off and give you one. When we count off, please hold the number up on your finger so you don't forget what number you are. Are you ready? I don't see your hands ready. Get ready. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Hold it up. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Hold it up. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, so now we're going to get together in these groups. Please, if you are a 1, come up here to this corner. If you are a 2, go way back in that corner at the last table by the fan. 3's over here by the back window. 4 by my desk.
Do we have to bring our iPad? Okay. Do we have to bring our iPad?
Yep, bring your iPad with you.
Do I have to face you?
Nope, you're all right. We're right there. Because there's too many. All right, everybody should be seated. Make sure you have your eyes up here so that we can understand this. Number 1, on this document, you are going to study the Silk Road. So when you get into this documentary, you'll be on number 1. Number 2, you are going to study the Swahili coast. Number 3, Marco Polo. And number 4, the Columbian Exchange. So when you do this, there's a reading piece, and then there are 2 questions. Now, your job at your table is not to independently do this. The reason that you're together is so that everybody can, 1, put in their ideas, 2, agree on the same thing, and number 3, that we can all have the same information, because later you're going to take this back to another group and you're going to be the teacher. So you're becoming an expert on this one so that you can teach somebody else about this information. So you have to make sure that everybody knows it. So at this table, once we've gotten our information, I have to make sure that, okay guys, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? And then we all get it out loud, and then we have to make sure that we write it. All right, let's write it. Let's write it. Everybody has the same thing. Check your neighbor, so that you have the same information as the person next to you, so that you both take that same information back to your tables. When we read this, our jobs are going to be reading out loud by sentence or line. You choose. It doesn't make any difference to me whether you read out loud by sentence or by line. A line is this. A sentence is where the period is. But not paragraphs, because I want everybody to have a chance to put their input in verbally. Also, read your questions out loud if you're short and people haven't read yet. So you have about 5 to 10 minutes at your group to read this, discuss it, make sure everybody has the same answer when I come around and check, and make sure everybody understands that so that they can write it down. Okay, begin. All right, part 2, here we go. Now that we have our answers and we're all confident in this information, we are going to regroup ourselves into a group that has a person that is a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. That's going to be your new group, 1 from each. We might be a little bit off the numbers, and I'll help you with that. So I need you to hold your number up again, whatever number your group is. Hold it on your fingers. And you need to find yourself in groups with a person that's a 1, a person that's a 2, a person that's a 3, and a person that's a 4. You have about 90 seconds to do this. When you get your group, sit down
I
together.
have glasses. I learned to move my ears. Oh, sorry.
Dale, ven conmigo.
Is it leaning up appropriately? Okay. So let's look at this. Now that you're in your groups of 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to go down all the way to the chart that says Globalization History. So use the chart below to record examples of intentional and unintentional. What does this mean, unintentional? No.
Not intentional.
Yeah, this word means by accident. They didn't mean to. So intentional, I meant to do this. And unintentional is by accident. It just sort of happened because we were doing this situation. So So you're going to record these that resulted from the trade. You may need to predict what the unintentional consequences could be. Meaning, when you go somewhere, even if you don't mean to, what could have been the unintentional consequences? So, let's talk about this, the Silk Road. Where, when, what were some of the planned changes? If you are the expert on the Silk Road, your job is to tell the group, okay, here's what they did. They went to blah, 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 from here to here, and this is when they went, and what these changes were. So you need to include three things: where, when, and what was planned. Oh, when they did it, they meant to bring these things. But in doing that, they also did these things. So your job is to put all your information together and combine it and put it on this chart. What did you learn from 1? What did you learn from 2? What did you learn from 3? What did you learn from 4? Okay? So raise your hand if you're number 1, Silk Road. If you're number 1, your job is to teach first. Begin. Okay. So I know that you guys are finishing up your chart, and I want to make sure that you all have something before our bell rings. I'm going to make sure you all have something before our bell rings. So please go to the last page. The last page. At the bottom of your chart, it talks about people going. What patterns do you notice about what they intentionally and unintentionally bring? People go to do what usually?
Trade goods.
Trade goods. People go to trade goods. They mean to do this. They mean to explore. But what do they unintentionally drop off and pick up? Religion. What else? Disease. What else? ¿Qué más? ¿Qué más?
Art.
What else or qué más? Sí, lo sé.
Oh, languages!
Aha! I'll do my push-ups. I'll do my push-ups.
I was like, why is she talking in
Religion, disease, languages, art, culture. That's what they accidentally do. So I know you guys did not have time to do this individual part with globalism, so I'm going to make sure that we all have this information. Would you please, after adding these things, would you please open up your document that has vocabulary? It's called Globalization Vocabulary. Languages, cultures, religions, disease. So go to where you have your globalization vocabulary.
It's just oil.
Just oil.
Butter. With the...
No dejan de comer.
Okay, do you have your vocabulary document open?
Yeah.
Okay, the bell's going to ring in a second, so I want to make sure that you have this. I'll wait, but if the bell rings, you're not leaving. I'm still waiting. Open the part of your vocabulary where the first word is blank. It says globalization, and there's no definition in the first word. It's highlighted yellow. So globalization, what we have talked about all day today in this lesson, is that it is the increase of movement of products, people, money, and ideas, meaning languages, cultures, religion, around the world. So it used to happen only a little. You should be adding this to your definition because it will be on the quiz or the test at the end of this unit. Did you write it in? Anha, did you write it in yours? Ferran, did you write it in yours? Benha, I did not see you write it. Please write it. So in your definition for globalization, do not leave until you've written it. Make sure that you have this. When you walk out of this classroom, your ticket out is that you show me that this is written in your own handwriting or typed. You can type it. Sorry, just not picture is what I mean. Before you leave. Show me before you leave. Show me before you leave that this is written.